consistent people. All right, live on YouTube, we have Susan Michel and Surrender to Joy. Susan, this mic is all yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. I am the author of Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to embody the knowledge of. And I am so grateful for this beautiful platform. Myrna Skoller, who is usually with me, is with her grandchildren today. So I'm sure she's having lots of fun. And Glorian is here with me. Yay. How are you today, Glorian?
Wonderful, Susan. Glad to be here with you. And I'm glad Myrna's having some time with her grandchildren. I told her to definitely send us pictures. So,
Yes, yes. I'm looking forward to seeing pictures from Myrna. And I just got a chat from Lori Coburn. It's so great to know that you're here, Lori. And if you have any shares, I would love to hear because you're such a wise and amazing teacher. And then I think Zolma said she would be right back as well. So we have lots of amazing Course in Miracles teachers and students here today, which is just so fabulous. Speaking of amazing teachers and students, I believe Dove is here as well. I just listened to his podcast, Miracles Cafe, and it was so amazing. I loved it. Yeah, it was just such an amazing podcast. I always learned so much from you. Thank you so much for that. And I think the teacher prior to Dove was Tina Louise Spalding, who is another amazing Course in Miracles teacher and student. So it's all good. It's all just very, very good, as a good friend of mine always says. So I will start with the introduction of my book, as I do so many times. Um, the introduction of my book states, my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. And I think I will start with the word surrender because this is what I was just listening to on Dove's podcast, Miracles Cafe. Uh, Dove spoke about the word surrender, which is such a powerful, empowering word because the strength that we get from A Course in Miracles is of God. So all strength is available to us when we are surrendered to God. When we block God, we have no strength at all. So our power lies in surrendering to a power greater than ourselves. It's about surrendering our will with a small w to his will with a capital W. And then that's where all true power lies. And again, as I heard Dove say about an hour ago, the text of A Course in Miracles does not have the word surrendered in it at all. You know, there is not one word in the whole text or workbook or manual for teachers has the word surrender because Helen Schuckman did not like the word surrender. which is very interesting. It's very, very interesting because I think the Course in Miracles talks about surrendering. It just doesn't use the word surrender. And, for me, I think that is my challenge in this lifetime. I think that's part of the reason that I entitled my book Surrender to Joy, because I think Susan, the ego, is pretty much of a control freak. I like to control everything all the time. That makes me feel safe. But what that does is it blocks my true power. It blocks my true potential. It blocks God's miracles from working themselves through me. So one of my big lessons in this lifetime is learning to surrender. It's learning to let go. It's learning to be completely dependent upon a power greater than me, but that I'm a part of. I say often, God is the ocean, we are all waves. God is the sun, we are all rays. When rays stemming from this sun. So I think that another thing, again, I just got from Miracles Cafe. I'll give all the credit to Dove because he's so amazing. Trust. When we can truly trust in God and surrender to this power greater than ourselves, we are always safe. God is always with us. But we have a choice, at each and every moment. We can choose spirit or we can choose ego. We can choose light or we can choose darkness. But when we can trust that God has our back at each and every moment, when we can trust that we are always safe, when we can just release our will to his will, he's always there. And it's a state of calm, it's a state of bliss, it's a state of serenity that is always available to us. Right, Glorian?
Absolutely, Susan. Absolutely. I just love this today here because I am big on surrendering also. Surrendering the ego, surrendering the carnal mind, dying daily to that personal sense of self, where Jesus tells us in the Course, letting go of the obstacles to love's presence, which are our thoughts of sin, guilt, judgments, and grievances. So when we're surrendering, and I'm fully aware of that also, that people have come to me and said, surrender's not in the Course, but other words like willingness, allow, let us. I think let us is in there like 400 something times. So that's really saying to give up what I think and let us look at it a different way, which to me is, a matter of semantics, because it is actually surrendering the ego in favor of the Christ that I am. And I love the name of your book, and I resonate with it so deeply because that's what we're always surrendering to, the joy of what I am. And we can use the word joy synonymously with love, grace, wholeness, oneness. It's all the same thing. It's the experience of the Spirit of God. So whatever word we want to use or symbol we want to use, it's the experience of joy that we're after. And we can only obtain that if we surrender this false thinking mind. And when you were speaking about trust, when we recognize that we are extensions of the love of God, we're extensions of joy, we're extensions of grace, and we recognize that in true trust, we know what we are. We're accepting our divinity. So when we do that, we're surrendering the ego in favor of Christ's magnitude, where we recognize that there's no opposite to that there's nothing that can ever impede upon our divinity, the grace of God accepted. And I just want to quickly go into this. I know it's lesson 42, it's a little lengthy, but this is the review where Jesus tells us, God is my strength, vision is his gift. Let me not look to my own eyes to see today. So there's surrender. Let me not look to my own eyes to see today. Let me be willing. Let me be willing to exchange my pitiful illusion of seeing for the vision that is given by God. Christ's vision is his gift, and he has given it to me. Let me call upon this gift today so that this day may help me to understand eternity. So this is what he's saying here. Let me. That means I have to look different with different eyes. Let me not look to my own eyes. Let me not look to the body, the ego, the false sense of self. Let me surrender. Let me allow, be willing. Let me be willing to exchange my pitiful illusion of seeing this hellish experience for the vision that is given by God, the acceptance of what I am, the Christ consciousness, Christ's vision. Christ's vision is his gift once we surrender this duality, this false sense of being, projecting duality, good, bad, right, wrong, out there on the world. So we're accepting his gift that he has given to me. We don't need to do anything, but just receive it. Let me call upon this gift today. So we're invoking spirit so that this day may help me to understand eternity. So we give up that false mind in favor of true perception, in favor of the Christ consciousness, allowing it to make its interpretation where we experience our divinity, the eternity of God. Thanks.
Thank you, Glorian. Thank you so much. And Dove wrote in the chat room, trust is the highest form of surrender. To rely upon spirit totally is highest surrender. I think that trust does take courage. It really does. I say each week, the course is so simple. Love is the only thing that can make us happy. However, the world is run on an egoic thought system. The world is a dualistic experience, and there's something safe about maintaining a certain amount of anger. My sister and I were talking about anger the other day. Um, you know, my niece is going through a lot of changes right now in her life, and there is a certain amount of anger that she hangs on to. And I noticed that in myself as well, that I think, like holding on to a certain amount of anger seems to give me a sense of control, because I think to completely just release that anger, there is a vulnerability that we step into that's on the other side of the anger. But to really step into that place of peace, of serenity, of love, it's a little bit scary for the ego, just to let go of its control. So, I think, again, a course in miracles, it's teaching us to release those egoic emotions. It's teaching us to release our fear-based emotions. I mean, a course in miracles is very clear. There are two emotions. There's love and there's fear. All the emotions that are not love fall under the umbrella of fear. But to really let go of the fear-based emotions completely, it is scary because we're going into unfamiliar territory. So it's a discipline, it's a challenge, it's a daily discipline, it's a daily challenge. And And we need to get used to connecting to this higher state of consciousness on a consistent basis. It's like peeling away layers of an onion, you know? I mean, we're constantly going deeper and deeper. We're constantly getting closer and closer to heaven. Um, and it's a little bit scary because it's unfamiliar territory. Today is June 27th, talking about heaven. And today is my mother's birthday. My mother would be 88 years old if she were alive today. And I believe that she's in heaven. I believe her spirit is watching over me. I believe she lives inside of me. So I always remember her today. And I had a little celebration for my mother on Tuesday after my talk here and Gather. I had a talk with Myrna, and then I went to celebrate my mother's birthday with a friend of mine who has a mother who also has a birthday on the same day, June 27th. I always enjoy celebrating birthdays because I just think they're so beautiful. And my mother was just, when she was here in her body form, she was so kind, she was so nurturing, she was so loving. She always reminded me of Mother Teresa. I would say, my mom is just very giving, very generous. So I think she just had a lot of love in her. I think that her challenge in this lifetime, which I have learned from, was that she did have a tendency to be sacrificial. She used to sacrifice her needs for other people. That was just how she was raised, and that's what she passed on to me. And what I have learned through A Course in Miracles is that sacrifice is not of God, because sacrifice is always win lose, where true love is always win win. So again, that was a lesson that was passed on to me through my mother, which was the perfect lesson for me to learn, that when I am truly giving of God, when I am truly a conduit for God's divine miracles, I am not losing anything at all. I am not sacrificing anything at all. It's like when I truly give to my brother, I get so much in return. So that's why A Course in Miracles says giving and receiving are the same, because the only person that we're really giving to is ourself. God has but one son, and we are all part of the same sonship. So when I feel my equality with my brother, that's when I'm seeing him through the eyes of Christ. When I see my brother as better than me, I'm not looking at him clearly. When I see my brother as worse than me, I'm not looking at him clearly. But when I'm seeing all the beauty and the love and the glory in my brother, and then I am seeing him clearly, and I'm also feeling that same beauty and that same glory and that same love in me. We can't give anything to our brother that we don't feel that we have within ourselves, and that's why giving and receiving are the same. And that's why sacrifice is not of God. So again, that was a lesson, a challenge that was passed on to me from my mother, and although she had so many amazing qualities, and she was so generous and she was so kind, um, she did teach me to sacrifice, and I have learned through A Course in Miracles that sacrifice of any kind is not of God, because God doesn't want me to be weak in any way. He just wants me to be empowered and happy and joyful. And the more joyful I am, the more I'm going to want to give to my brother. And the more I can give to my brother, the more I can remember that I have within myself. It's like we don't even know how much we have within ourselves until we give it away. So that's why giving and receiving are the same. That's why it's all about win-win. That's why it's all about peace, love, joy, and happiness. And I need to be aware of not sacrificing my own well-being for the well-being of other people, because that's not really giving at all. Right, Gloria?
Right. Amen, sister. I love everything that you shared, and you sharing about mom's birthday. And I shared before about the transition to spirit of my teacher tomorrow. And, we recognize that there it really is no loss. We miss people in form, but we're united in oneness. And that's what we're taught in this course. And that was her message. And, we recognize that, there's only that one singular reality, and that we all have wholly. There's not that it's broken down and apart, like you were saying, the sunbeam from the sun. We're all one and connected and interconnected. And I'll share this, maybe this would be, something for you. I shared this morning, and this is what her basic teaching was. And we're going to talk about freedom during this whole week and everything. But just very simply, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is health, there is wholeness, there is supply, there is peace, joy, and dominion. And we can rest in that. So once we're willing to accept ourselves as God created us and recognize that the Spirit of God is right here where I am, that I am the temple of the living God beyond the concept that we seemingly see, that's where our freedom lies. And that's where our joy lies. And that's our oneness. So there's never any death. The Son of God is free. And it's just so wonderful to know that, although we do wander into temptation and we do miss people on the level of the world, and that's natural and it's perfectly okay. But the idea is to recognize that every lesson that comes up here for us is teaching us that I'm not a body, everything. So all trials, are presented once again, that where I made a faulty choice, a new one can be made. It's always the choice we're making is that there is no death. I'm not a body, and I'm free. I'm free in the spirit of I am. And I love what you shared so many wonderful things, Susan, about I can't give what I don't have. And that's that whole idea of the lesson. All that I give is given to myself, because there's only one. So we really cannot extend what we have not experienced. And, we come to recognize that, um, the idea is that if we're going to experience the love of God, this is something that we can't know with the ego. The ego has to be surrendered so that we can move into knowledge. And knowledge is not acquired learning. Knowledge is the willingness to experience God, to experience the divinity of I am, which we only gain through the holy instant and the quiet mind. And when you were talking about sacrifice, I gladly make the sacrifice of fear. I love that lesson, because what we're always sacrificing by buying into the illusion is our reality, is our divinity. We're giving up our willingness to trust in what I am by making the error real. So I'm gladly make the sacrifice of fear, which is everything of this world, acceptance of what I am. And when you were speaking about control, everything always comes down to control. And you said something, the course is simple, but it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because of control. The ego wants to be right instead of giving that up. And of course, that is because the ego cannot know what God is. So it has to be surrendered in order to move into the experience of what it is, because we can't think our way out of it. But when we talk about control, the ego's specialness, the idols, the attachments and investments that we have, these are to maintain control. We buy into these things. We hold on to these idols of specialness in order to keep us in this sense of being. The ego is afraid of the love of God because it can't know what it is. It has to die in order for us to move into that state of beingness as we were created. So I think we can simplify it. I know Rafi talks about Lester Levinson, and I do really like that work where everything comes up to be let go of and recognize either we want to be accepted, we want to feel safe, or we want control. But even those other two, it all comes down to control. It becomes down to the ego being right or the Christ being all that there is. That's always the war against ourself. That's what that is too. That we're constantly warring against the reality of what I am to be right, to maintain its existence. And the ego is trying to preserve its existence because it knows its time is limited and it's going to hold on to us in whatever way specialness wants to manifest. And it manifests in many, many different ways. So, I really loved everything that you shared. And I think that, when we recognize that the only thing we're ever sacrificing is the love of God, is what I am as I was created in favor of this. So I gladly make the sacrifice of fear, the illusion, the hellish experience, so I can move into that space of the beingness that I am. Thanks so much.
Yeah, very well said, Glorian. Very well said. Sacrifice is just such a huge topic, and it's just such an important part of the egoic thought system. Um, when I go into my glossary of terms here that I go into frequently by Robert Perry, he describes sacrifice as the act of voluntarily losing something in order to gain something else. I really think that the traditional Christian church teaches that sacrifice is really important to stay in God's good graces, which is probably part of the reason that I have such a strong reaction to the word sacrifice. Part of the reason that I just don't like it. And then A Course in Miracles is very clear. Again, I'm reading from this glossary by Robert Perry. Sacrifice is totally unknown to God, for he only gives without cost and knows nothing of loss. So when I am sacrificing, I need to be clear. A Course in Miracles is teaching me to be clear that I am aligned with the egoic thought system. When I am sacrificing my time, I'm not getting closer to God. I'm actually blocking God. I'm actually pushing God away from me when I am sacrificing. It says here, we think, however, that God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus ask us to sacrifice all that we hold dear, especially the things of the body. This notion severely impedes the spiritual journey, for it makes the goal seem fearful. So I think it was very beneficial for me to learn that sacrifice is of the ego and not of God. Sacrifice is disempowering me. It is not empowering me. And also, sacrifice is really a core component of the special relationship. It says here, sacrifice is the basis of the special relationship, where we believe that true love demands as well as gives sacrifice. This belief makes God's love seem like the ultimate demand. Sacrificing for another only induces guilt, which is meant to obligate the other to sacrifice in return. I will say for years, that's how all of my romantic relationships were. Now, I'm not saying there was no love in my romantic relationships, because of course there was some love in my romantic relationships. But a lot of what I did for ex-boyfriends is I was constantly giving to them. But the reason I would give to them is because I wanted them to feel indebted to me, because I was so afraid of being abandoned by them. So I thought if only I could give enough, then I could keep them tied to me through guilt, and then they wouldn't leave me. I operated this way unconsciously for years, because true giving knows nothing of guilt. True giving knows nothing of sacrifice. When I am truly giving to my brother, I want nothing in return. It's when God gives to me, when God gives to the sonship, he wants nothing in return. All he wants me to do is accept his love. That's all he wants. And because I am created in God's image, giving truly to my brother without expecting anything in return is the only thing that can ever make me happy. Because when we give to get, that is of the ego, and that doesn't align our thought system with God's system, with God's mind. The only thing that can make us happy is giving unconditionally, giving love unconditionally. It's opening our minds to the beautiful unconditional love of God our Father, allowing him to love us, allowing ourselves to be a conduit and extend his love to the rest of the sonship. That's what A Course in Miracles is teaching us to do, you know. And then going back to some of the beautiful points that Glorian just made, is she shared that everything needs to come up to let go of. When I was listening to, again, Course in Miracles on Audible today, Jesus was saying that basically God wants us to be transparent. God wants us to give all of our fear-based thoughts to him so he can help us to release them. When we hide something from God, God can't help us to heal. And a lot of people do that because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed of their shortcomings. So they always want to appear together. I do the same thing. We all do. I think that's part of our humanity. But sometimes our greatest strides in life, sometimes of our greatest learning on this spiritual journey, is when everything appears to be very messy. Because this is when, the ego might look at this episode and say, oh my God, what a disaster. But God is looking at this episode, this chapter, and he's applauding our willingness to allow our shortcomings to expose themselves, because only by shortcomings exposing themselves can they heal. I know Course in Miracles says this somewhere in the text, but some of what we think are our greatest setbacks are our greatest successes, and what we think are our greatest successes aren't that great at all. It's like we have a hard time judging what's good and what's not so good. it's like that early lesson in the workbook for students. I do not know what anything is for. It's I think what's really important is just to keep it real, is to allow the fear-based emotion to come to the surface so we can give them to the Holy Spirit and he can help us to release them. It's also very important to be compassionate with ourselves as we learn and we grow, you know? Um, so another conversation that I had with a friend this week was about end of life care. She was staying with her mother um, as her mom was in the process of passing away. So my friend, a good friend of mine, is living with her mother right now. Her mother is in the process of passing. Her mother is just about to go into hospice. And I started just thinking about how beautiful that time in someone's life is, because at the end of our life, we are not so concerned with tangible things anymore. We really start looking at life from a different perspective. And we realize that the only place and time that's important is the present moment, because I was a hospice volunteer in New York City for a number of years. And I think what was so beautiful about me spending time with people in the last chapter of their lives. I mean, nobody gets out of this world without their body dying. The soul and the spirit, of course, never dies, but we release our body at the end of this lifetime. And I think what really is so beautiful about the end of life experience is that you learn to stay fully present in the moment that you're in, um, and it helps you remember the truth of who you are. It helps you remember the truth of who your brother is. And you also realize that the only thing that matters is the love that was shared. The rest just disappears. The rest just doesn't even matter. But most people just align themselves with the present moment and focus on the love. um right, Gloria?
Absolutely. And I've had that experience. So, through that medical accident where I was on my deathbed. And it is such a wonderful opportunity, in addition, of course, to the NDE. But just that recognition, when I was laying there and thinking of valuing the valueless, that everything here is valueless, and it's only the love that you take with you. So you take nothing. You don't take your body. You don't take anything that you think you've accumulated. All that you take with you is the love. And it was wonderful because I maintain that awareness of that, we're not, even if we're sick or something, this is a serviceable instrument. We do what we can for it, but this is not going with us. What's going with us is what we've moved, like you were saying before, we go deeper and deeper through practice of the experience of what I am. So the idea is to, as much as possible, while we're seemingly here, develop that awareness of the Spirit of God. So when we transition, it's very easy because we're in that Christ consciousness mindset. So I love that, Susan. I also love what you said about the ego and the shortcomings. And Jesus does tell us that we can't judge our advances or retreats, because what we seemingly think is an advance could be blocking us, when our retreats is teaching us what we really need to know, which is always that I'm not a body. But the recognition that the ego is a shortcoming is huge. So it's everything that has to be surrendered, every thought of the ego, everything we think about ourselves, all of the false concepts of self are surrendered because the ego is those things: fear, guilt, hate, whatever form, whatever word we want to use for it. It's separation. So we can't spiritualize that ego. It has to be surrendered to that joy of what we are. And I agree 100%. Gentleness, we're gentle with ourselves, but we're vigilant for God and the kingdom. So we can look at it with the eyes of the Holy Spirit, with gentleness, but we have to be willing to let it go in vigilance for God and the kingdom. And what you were saying about, about love, special love, I was talking about that before. I have my own theory on that, after, studying, the course book and what have you, where, he talks about every special relationship is here to be healed and made holy. So what does that really mean? The specialness, the projections, everything that we put out there, our thoughts and ideas, have to be surrendered in the recognition of our oneness where we claim our grace. So when we recognize that the only true love there is God's, mine, yours, and everyone's, that's the only sustaining love, and that's it. That's the only thing that's going to fulfill us. Now, that doesn't mean we don't look at the reflections of love's presence and appreciate them, because of course we do. But we recognize that our salvation is not found in a reflection of love. And, with the special relationships, I think what I've claimed for myself and what I utilize in my life, not only with a personal special relationship, but every relationship is special if it's about the ego. So we look at that, we recognize that no one's interests are separate from our own. We're willing to take responsibility for the projections we're making out there. And we truly bless in making no demands. And that's really it, because in those three components, we're accepting that beyond this concept is the love of God, God's, mine, yours, and everyone's. And that's what we really seek. So any desire or whatever we have here, which the Course talks about the miracle impulse, and the miracle impulse is that desire for the oneness of God, that desire to experience myself as I was created. So that's what I was hearing when you were speaking about that, Susan. Also, going back to that lesson, I gladly make the sacrifice of fear. There's a little prayer. Can I read it?
Please.
Okay, so he says, here is the only sacrifice you ask of your beloved Son. You ask him to give up all suffering, all sense of loss and sadness, all anxiety and doubt, and freely let your love come streaming into his awareness, healing him of pain and giving him your own eternal joy. Such is the sacrifice you ask of me, and one I gladly make, the only cost of restoration of your memory to me for the salvation of the world. So we're buying into the fear here. You ask to give up all suffering. That's the only sacrifice we need make. I gladly make that sacrifice of fear. Any sense of the ego, all sense of loss and sadness, which is what the ego is, which is what you were saying, that, the ego is the shortcomings. So anxiety, doubt, whatever form it's going to take, freely let, there's the word let again. Surrender that ego and allow your love come streaming into his awareness, healing him of pain and giving him your own eternal joy. And like you said, giving and receiving is one in truth. All that I've given is given to myself. So if I'm recognizing my own eternal joy, then that's what's extending out there. That's the only way we can do it, because the ego does not love. The ego divides, the ego judges, separates. So he tells us, such is the sacrifice you ask of me, and one I gladly make. The only cost of restoration of your memory to me for the salvation of the world. So salvation comes from my one self united with my creator. We can only remember that when we're willing to look past these seeming concepts the idols, the forms of specialness, and all the manifestations that the ego takes, which is everything that is not the experience of love. So we're giving up nothing for everything, the littleness for the magnitude. And he tells us, as we pay the debt we owe to truth, a debt that merely is letting go of all self-deceptions and of images we worshipped falsely. I guess, again, there the word is letting go of, surrendering the self-deceptions of the images we worship falsely. Truth returns to us in wholeness and in joy. What we are wholeness, we are joy, and we're no longer deceived by the false sense of self. Love has now returned to our awareness, and awareness in meaning not thought, experience. And we are at peace again. The only way we're at peace is if we accept my peace, God's peace. There is no peace in this world. And we are at peace again, for fear has gone, the ego is gone, and only love remains. So we were willing, through our surrender of the ego, to bring the darkness to the light. And the light then dispels the darkness. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing that we really need to sacrifice is our fear. So we need to let go of that fear, let go of the darkness, the pain points within our unconscious mind. Just allow them to come to the light so they can be released. That's why as Dove always says, our triggers are our teachers, because when we get upset by something that someone else says, it's not actually that person that we're upset at. It's something within our unconscious mind that has not yet been healed, that is coming to the surface for healing purposes. So it's never about the other person. It's always about what got triggered within us. Because if somebody says something negatively about us, and we know for a fact that it's not true, we probably wouldn't have a reaction, or we wouldn't have a negative reaction, because we know that what they said is nonsensical. But if somebody says something about us that we feel might be true, if somebody says something about us that we feel insecure about, we will react, So the best thing that we can do when life triggers us is to pause. Like, how do we stop that cycle? How do we stop triggers from repeating themselves? I believe what we need to do is we just need to pause when we feel fear come up in us, and give it to the Holy Spirit within our own mind so healing can occur. Because if we get triggered, if we react back and attack the person who triggers us, that just exacerbates the problem. There's no healing with that. The other way to deal with it is to shut down and to internalize whatever anger we're feeling. And all that does is create disease. Basically, we need to own the pain, give it to God. And this is, I believe, how healing occurs. This is how I believe painful feelings are released. A friend of mine and me came up with a 4P process a couple of years ago when we were talking about the whole concept of triggers. It's when we get triggered in life, if we can just, again, instead of reacting, if we can pause, right? Just pause, own the pain. I do believe you need to own the pain. Then we need to process that pain point. Then we need to pray and ask for help from God, or ask from help from our higher self, so that pain point can be released. I mean, I believe that's why we're here in this earthly classroom. We're here in this earthly classroom to learn the meaning of unconditional love. I mean, I do believe in past lifetimes. I do believe in reincarnation. I know Course in Miracles takes no stance on reincarnation. And maybe in a real deep sense, reincarnation is not real, because the only time that is real is the now, But from a certain point of view, I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe we come back into this earthly classroom in different bodies, and we carry pain points with us from the past. And the reason we're here is we're here to release the pain. We're here to learn to love unconditionally. So lessons that weren't learned in lifetimes can be triggered and relearned in this lifetime. And the answer to every single so-called problem is the same. The answer to every so-called problem is love. No matter what happens, the answer is love. That's why they say the three fastest ways. That's why A Course in Miracles says the three fastest ways to heaven, which is just a state of mind that resides in unconditional love, eternal bliss, is forgiveness, forgiving our brother, forgiving our brother for what did not occur. And true forgiveness, it's always about not even forgiving him or her. It's about forgiving ourselves, because all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. So forgiveness is a really fast way to get back to heaven. Accepting our life exactly as it is without wanting to change a thing. I mean, again, what you resist persists. It's not about resisting anything. It's about accepting everything in my life exactly as it is. And gratitude, because when we are grateful for what we have, our vibratory frequency elevates itself. And so when we are grateful for what we do have, we have a higher vibratory frequency that we resonate with, and more good things, more abundance comes to us, because we don't get in life what we want. We get in life, we see in life what we believe we are. So we're always attracting to us what we're focused upon. And when we're focused upon love, when we're focused upon abundance, when we're focused on peace, love, joy, and happiness, that's what the universe is going to reflect back to us. That's actually a very good point. We don't get in life what we want. We don't get in life what we fight for. We don't get in life what we push for. Because when we are fighting, when we are pushing, when we are struggling, we are at a lower energetic frequency. So we do not attract to us abundance when we're coming from a place of lack. Because when we're fighting for things, again, we're believing that we don't deserve what we're fighting for. So that's what gets reflected back to us. But again, when we can just when we can just lift our consciousness to a higher vibratory frequency and allow ourselves to thank God, to be grateful for everything that we have. God can just give us more because this is the frequency that we're aligning our minds with. Right, Gloria?
Love it, love it, love it. Exactly. And that's it, light and peace and joy abide in me, but only if I'm in that space where I recognize that by accepting that Christ consciousness. So when we wish and we're saying the good, the holy, the beautiful, that's not experienced in the ego. Experienced in the willingness to remember and recognize and acknowledge and accept what I am. So that's where we want to be. We want to constantly be willing to switch our mind from that fearful place to that place of true perception to the love of God. And just going back to a few things you said real quick, about being upset and whatever, we recognize that we can only be upset from what somebody else says, like you said, if we believe there's an element of truth of it. But also, we have to look at that. If I'm thinking I'm judged, I'm the one doing the judging. So we go back to there's no condemnation in God and there's no condemnation in me because God does not condemn. So therefore, we're aligned with the false mind. Then we can recognize that projection makes perception, which is a mirror and not a fact. So what's coming from my mind, I'm perceiving out there, which is showing me what I think, but it's not a fact. So actually, it's a gift because it's being given to us to recognize the truth about what I am. So we use everything. We use the ego to get out of the ego. And what you were talking about at reincarnation, I agree with you. And yes, in the truest sense, there is no time. There only all time is now. And I believe that's what Jesus means in the Course. But when we're experiencing, quote, the unreal linear time, I think our unresolved guilt and fear, as we just were talking about, is projected out there. So that's why we want to forgive as much as we can now, so we let go of all of these false ideas that we have about ourselves, guilt, shame, fear, judgment, grievances, all of that, so that we're not projecting that out again. And that's what I truly do believe happens, that all unresolved guilt and fear is then projected, and then we see it again until we forgive it all. But that's my take on it. But, ultimately, in truth, Jesus tells us that, there is no reincarnation because all time is now. And you were saying something else, and it was coming to me about where Jesus tells us those who dwell with shadows are alone indeed. And again, that's coming in to our choice. Those that dwell with shadows are alone indeed, because if we're dwelling with shadows, we're in that duality, good, bad, right, wrong. And the idea is we're not going to have peace there. We'll never have peace because we're alone. We're separated from our source. We're separated from creation of what I am. So that, is an all or nothing thing, but we can use the shadows to recognize beyond the concept and the image is the eternal light of God. And that's our fulfillment. And that's what Jesus tells us. Salvation comes from my one self united with my creator. But I can only unite with my creator, which is spirit, if I'm willing to accept myself as spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here with me today. It is 2:00. This was an amazing talk. And I
Love
love
you,
you
sister.
all.
Love you, sister. Well, everyone.
I will end with the introduction of A Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that's real is the love. Thank you. Thank you. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn.
Thank you so much, Susan, Michelle, and thank you, Gloria, and everyone who joined.